unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello everyone, and welcome to In Depth, the production of Souls and Liberty. Just 35 days to go with a very interesting part of the campaign playing out tonight in New York City.
Tim Walz was not the one who was picked to be on the stage by the voters. And so he's going to be up there. You know, frankly, if I was him, I'd be scared too. He's not supposed to be there. He's not supposed to be on the stage. And J.D. Vance is supposed to be on that stage.
Joining us today is Trey Traynor, a member of the Federal Election Commission, yet here on Souls and Liberty in Depth in his private capacity as an everyday American citizen exercising his God-given and constitutionally protected First Amendment right to free speech. I'm your host, Gary Michael Vorse, right here in Houston. Trey, so the Veep debate. We got a little interesting thing here from a Catholic perspective. Vance is a convert to Catholicism, and Walz is an apostate to Catholicism.
Absolutely, Gary. I mean, it's a really exciting time for the both campaigns tonight. What you got is you got a Rust Belt Catholic versus a Minnesota Lutheran. You have a man whose childhood brought him to the faith, and you have a man who's completely left the faith to go celebrate his honeymoon in China and celebrate with communists. So it's a very interesting debate we'll have tonight.
That's quite the way of phrasing it, but it's true. I don't know if you saw this. I just noticed it this morning. The Walz campaign, all the reports are flying around that he had been to China like 20 or 30, 40 different times, during various aspects of his political career. I thought it was interesting, speaking of the China connection, communist China connection, which why would somebody who believes in Jesus Christ and all that go hang out with communists? Anyway, his campaign said, oh, no. He hasn't been 30 or 40 times to China. It's only about 15.
Right. I mean, is there really a difference between 30 and 15? I mean, what we know is that as a school teacher, he would take children over to China on trips with purposes of exposing them to the type of regime that they have there and trying to extol the virtues of how communism has any greatness within it is what he spent his time doing. And that's what we have in Tim Walz, is somebody who is open and outspoken about being, a big government liberal.
Yeah, he just got busted yesterday because one of his claims is, I don't know if he's trying to prop up his manhood or something. I don't know what his motive is for this particular lie, but he's like, I was in Tiananmen Square, during the crackdown in 1989. No, you weren't. A Nebraska newspaper produced a photo from you on that very day that was taken that very day while he was in the National Guard thing in Nebraska. He wasn't anywhere near Tiananmen Square when it happened. I mean, this dude's like just a perpetual liar.
Well, I think that's exactly what you see is the constant need to adjust their rhetoric. So they're willing to lie about anything. I was here, I was there, I was doing this, I was doing that, I was doing this, I wasn't doing that. We see the same thing. That whole campaign is built on a house of cards that is crumbling down. That's why we see Kamala Harris going to the border to try to shift her policy down there. I mean, the whole thing is built on a lie because she wasn't the original candidate. She didn't get any votes to become the nominee, and they're having to prop it up at every chance that they get.
Yeah, it's really very, it's pathetic. I mean, it's many things, but pathetic certainly is one of them. All right, we're going to have everybody ask you to stick around here. When we come back, a Veep debate like none other in U.S. political annals. They're usually boring, but not this time around. Stick around. The establishment has tried to assassinate President Trump twice. But we can't really be shocked that those who slaughter 1 million unborn babies each year would try to kill one more human being who stands in the way of their diabolical agenda. Trump, like every one of us, including all of us at Souls and Liberty, is a sinner. But like all of us, he is in the fight and fighting for all of us to get one more chance, maybe a last chance to save the republic. We must hang together, or as Benjamin Franklin said, we shall hang separately. and maybe far sooner than many imagine, because communists take over and always persecute Christians and Catholics in particular. Let us help you fight these forces of evil. Become a monthly supporter today so we can continue giving you the information, the tools of our faith, and the support network you need to go out and save souls and save our nation. Join our merry band of happy warriors and click below to get into the fight. We need you, we need each other. Join the resistance. Become a monthly donor today. Trey, Veep debates are usually kind of boring, policy wonky kind of things, and they don't move the needle at all. Almost pointless, almost. Well, that's not going to be the case tonight, is it?
No, it's not going to be the case at all. And you're right. I mean, we think back to, probably the one that most people remember is the Joe Lieberman, Dick Cheney debate. And everybody thought that that was such a breath of fresh air with two old white guys sitting there discussing policy. What you're going to have tonight, I think, is a great discussion of policy, because Tim Walz is going to have to answer questions that Kamala Harris is incapable of answering. I hope that the first question that comes out is, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Kamala Harris couldn't answer that in the debate that she had with Donald Trump, and I'm not sure Tim Walz will be able to answer that question, at least honestly answer that question tonight. And the great thing that we'll see in this debate, though, is the policy discussion that will take place in a very aggressive format, I think, from both candidates. I think that he is such a devout, big government liberal that at the end of the day, he's going to push that line very hard. And it's going to give lots of areas of attack for J.D. Vance, who's going to push the America First agenda and talk about the successes of the previous Trump administration and how that can help to build America back.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm very curious of Vance, since we're talking about the debate itself and what the interesting highlights will probably be. I really hope that Vance goes on the attack like right out of the gate. We're going to talk about the media in the next segment, but he can certainly attack CBS on 100 different scores, but specifically anything he's aiming towards Walz. And forget about the lying about his military service and his rank and where he was and you have a gun and all that stuff and everything. I mean, this man didn't call in the National Guard in Minneapolis when Trump offered. He rebuffed him. No. He puts tampons in boys' bathrooms in schools. He signed one of the most pervasive abortion laws in the country. So much for Lindsey Davis at ABC. No state allows it. Well, isn't that kind of funny? Actually, his state allows it, and he signed it into law. So you talk about weird. He's the guy who came up with this J.D. Vance's weird thing. It just strikes me as I look at Vance, and he just seems to have this kind of moxie. Of course, the media and all the liberals hate him for it, but he seems to have this moxie that I think is going to be controlled. But I think he's going to land a few nuclear bombs right on Walz's head.
Well, I think you're right. And I think that the advantage that J.D. Vance has going into this debate is that there is no daylight between Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. They are both the same type of San Francisco, Minnesota liberal. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what he's going to be debating about. And the things you just mentioned, the tampons in the bathrooms, not calling in the National Guard, those are all things and all policy positions that align perfectly with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has voted for unabated, unregulated abortion as a member of the United States Senate. She's been in a position to not protect the borders. I mean, you want to talk about not calling in the National Guard when they're needed. I mean, she's left the southern border wide open. And so he has the ability to focus on specific policy positions that Walz has no choice but to defend, those that he's taken as governor in Minnesota, that all align exactly with the liberal positions of Kamala Harris.
Yeah, one of the funny things with this is there are now reports circulating, again, as of this morning, as we start to turn that big spotlight on tonight's debate, that the thing Walz is nervous. These are what the reports are saying, that people around Walz are reporting that he's nervous. He's not a good debater, in his own view. He's not a good debater. And his biggest concern is letting Kamala down. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you're on a ticket to be one heartbeat away from the presidency of the United States. Your biggest concern should be the American people, not if Kamala isn't going to give you a cookie at the end of it. I mean, it's pathetic. What a pathetic example of manhood.
Right. No, you're exactly right. I mean, the first question ought to be, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? But the second question in every vice presidential debate is, tell us why you're qualified to be president should disaster strike. And, I don't think that Tim Walz is prepared to answer that. This talk about him being nervous and not being a great debater and those type of things, they're all trying to, they're trying to play the game and downplay any bad performance that he has by pre-baking that he wasn't a good debater. But at the end of the day, look, if you're running for vice president of the United States, the second most powerful job in the country, you need to be prepared. If you can't handle the debate with one person, you're not prepared to make decisions about national security problems that we may face. You're not prepared to make decisions to help with what's going on in the southern border, with what's going on in Israel, with what's going on in Ukraine, with what's going on with the economy. You're not prepared to do those things if you can't stand up and have a simple policy discussion with another human being.
Yeah, and news just broke, shortly before we started recording here for today, that the White House is saying that Iran is about ready to, release some massive ballistic strike against Israel. Really. So, Tim, how did we get to this point? And because it wasn't this way, 4 years ago. And what would you do right now if they launched the attack and you were president because some disaster struck? I think that's a legitimate question for him.
Those are legitimate questions that they need to have a discussion on. I think that this is where J.D. Vance probably excels in the debate, in that he's prepared to have those discussions. And what's great about this is you have two individuals, neither of whom have an extensive foreign policy background, but at the end of the day, one who is clearly more prepared to deal with foreign policy issues. So, if the debate turns to that tonight, then I think J.D. Vance probably cleans the floor with Tim Walz. But, the debate probably should stay focused on the issues that are most important to the American people right now. Sure. And that is what's going on with the economy and what's going on with the southern border. But I don't think you could help but have a conversation about what's going on in Israel, about the amount of money that's being spent in Ukraine, and how much money is not being spent in the United States to help with cleanup after the hurricane that just hit the East Coast.
Yeah. How many tens of billions, couple hundred billion we've sent to Ukraine to protect their borders and help their citizens, and nothing down in North Carolina? It's pathetic. It's pathetic. By the way, Biden and Harris didn't show up to the Ohio train disaster either. All right, when we come back, going to focus and switch over to the media. How will CBS approach this with their pro-Harris, anti-Trump bias following ABC getting flamed after their debate? What are we going to see? Right back. No matter who wins in November, we have to embrace that we are living in a post-Christendom culture. And the heart of that is a rejection of the gospel. As one item on our agenda to combat this, Souls and Liberty is hosting our first annual retreat at sea. You might be familiar with the annual event we produced for over 10 years at Church Militant. Dr. Jules Gomez, our Rome correspondent, and I are going to be doing the presenting, and the theme is Christians in Exile Triumphing in Adversity, which provides a whole range of discussions to think about. Now, we sail out of Galveston, Texas to the Western Caribbean November 10th to the 17th, yes, right after the election. I think all of us are probably going to need it one way or the other. Please join us for serious discussion, spiritual preparation, and bonding, very important, bonding with fellow Catholics. Registration information is provided below and on our site at soulsandliberty.com/retreat-at-sea 2024. So sign up and we hope to see you there. All right, Trey, your thoughts on the media bias you think that we can expect, or perhaps not expect tonight. If he wants to, Vance could jump pretty ugly all over CBS.
Oh, I think Vance could jump very ugly all over CBS, but I don't think that he will, because he doesn't want to give the satisfaction to the media of making them the target of this debate. I think he wants to stay focused on what the policy questions are. I think the media, frankly, wants to stay focused on what the policy issues in this election are as well, because they see the Harris campaign somewhat imploding with voters on specific policy issues. I mean, the polls have consistently shown that Trump leads when you're talking about the economy, that Trump leads when you're talking about immigration, that Trump leads when you're talking about national security and foreign policy issues. And so I think that the media really has to do a service to, I think they ultimately want to support the Walz-Harris ticket.
Sure.
So I think they're going to have to go hard into policy questions and try to push that narrative and not make themselves the center of what the debate is about. Otherwise, you'll get what they had coming out of the previous debate between Vice President Harris and President Trump, which is everyone focused on how bad the moderators were. But, Norah O'Donnell and Brennan should do a good job. I think it's an interesting optic to have two women doing the questioning of two white men. At the end of the day, it's that speaks to where we are in our country. And so, hopefully they'll focus on issues, and maybe they'll even get into some important issues for us as Catholics, and hopefully they'll bring up the abortion question. I don't think that they can help but bring up the abortion question because it's such a critical part of the Harris campaign. And I think as a practicing Catholic, J.D. Vance is going to knock it out of the park when he talks about the evils of abortion.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we should all be looking for. Because really, I mean, in my opinion, this entire campaign is really about abortion. They won't shut up about it. Granted, it's the only issue, if you want to look at it that way. It's the only issue they've really got. But still, even if everything was great and inflation was 0% and 500 million jobs were available, they are committed to killing children. And that's what all of this is about. Even with Roe gone, American politics revolves around the key central issue of abortion. That's why this race is even close. Look at all those things you just ticked off. Inflation, border, economy, everything. And over here is this one little issue of abortion, and that has the race, looks like Trump's kind of pulling ahead or, getting where he needs to be. But that abortion thing, that's it. I mean, that's it. That those many people would say, let's kill our children.
Well, that's why I started this. That's why I started this show with the fact that we have a Rust Belt Catholic versus a Minnesota liberal. I mean, it ultimately does come down to it. I mean, if the Democrats what they're doing is they're nationalizing all of the elections for the House, for the Senate, and for the presidency around the issue of an abortion. And I think that it is a great subject for J.D. Vance to talk about, to educate people on, and to espouse the truth that abortion is murder, and to focus on what the church teaches, and to draw that contrast between a man who left the church to him joining the church and why he joined the church. And he can talk about all of the things that drew him to the church, not the least of which is the pro-life stance of the church. So yes, if they want to make it about abortion, I think J.D. Vance should absolutely go there, and he should talk about the evils of abortion, and he should get Tim Walz to answer the question that Kamala Harris wouldn't. At what point would you draw the line? Would it be at 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months? Or do we ultimately go to where the former governor of Virginia said and say, we let the baby be born and then make a decision at that point? I think that is a critical issue for voters, clearly. And if the Democrats want to nationalize the election around abortion, then let's embrace it and let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think I'll get your final thoughts on this, but I think one of the things we can look to is, it's true Harris got under Trump's skin, but when you consider everything that has happened to the man, tried to be killed, and all these lawsuits and everything else, I mean, yeah, he's pretty pissed. So when she starts throwing these lies out and stuff, as she did, and ABC did also, you kind of say, yeah, I get that. I think that's why the needle didn't move at all, really. In this case, I don't think Vance is getting under his skinnable like that. He seems to just be very, on point, ready to go. And Walz strikes me as some big, kind of fluffy, lying, ethereal type dude. I think it's going to be sort of a test of the two visions of manhood sitting up on that stage tonight.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I think what you're going to see in J.D. Vance is a kid who grew up in a hard scrabble background and has pulled himself up by the bootstraps and is ready for the fight and ready to engage. He's earned his way onto this stage. Tim Walz was put on this stage by Kamala Harris as somebody who, she wasn't picked by the voters to be the one to be on that stage with Donald Trump, which means Tim Walz was not the one who was picked to be on the stage by the voters. And so he's going to be up there. Frankly, if I was him, I'd be scared too. He's not supposed to be there. He's not supposed to be on the stage. And J.D. Vance is supposed to be on that stage. So, I think it makes for great fireworks tonight. And I think that J.D. Vance will be unshakable. And I think you may see a rattled Tim Walz when we get done.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Trey Trainer. 35 days to go. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and analysis. As always, very good, very insightful and all of that. Thank you very much, Trey. All right. Before we leave you, Tim Walz is the prototype male of the women's lib movement. Let us explain. What will be evident in tonight's Veep debate, pretty much unlike any other Veep debate in U.S. history, will not only be two different visions for America, but actually two clashing visions of manhood, of masculinity. Don't believe me? Watch this.
There's also been an important part, or an interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny. I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this. And to me, it's the right thing to do. Support women. It's mutual, like with Kamala and I, we support each other, we have each other's back. And I've said many times when we lift up women, we support women, whether it's pay equity, child care, family leave, and all these issues that, this post-Dobbs hellscape, women should not be less than. Women should not have less rights and be treated differently. That's not the American way.
All right, so much to reflect on, so little time. First, Jen Psaki should not be a journalist because she's not. She's a communist hack. Secondly, Doug Emhoff, the modern example of masculinity, rambling on about how women need to be supported. Seriously? This man who had sex with his children's nanny, cheating on his wife, and according to reports, got her pregnant and supported her in the killing of his child to cover it all up. Bastard. If that's the modern example of masculinity, maybe we need to institute the death penalty for beta males. What's on that stage tonight will be a headlong crash of views about masculinity, the uplifting of it versus the demolition of it. Vance supports women by wanting them to be helped to do the right thing, meaning moral and good. Walz wants to support women by helping encourage them in everything wrong. Tampons in the boys' bathroom, really? There's weird. Unrestricted abortion, of course, and yes, ABC News, Minnesota is one of the 9 states that has 0 restrictions on when an abortion can be performed. Brought to you in Minnesota by courtesy of Tim Walz, who signed that into law. If men like Emhoff and Walz, who revel in killing their own children or supporting women in killing theirs, who support perverting little boys and corrupting their young, still uninformed intellects, if these are the example of modern masculinity, then fold up your tents. I was going to say grab your guns, your weapons of war, but I don't want to trigger Tim Walz. Speaking of lies, here's another. In his claim to be so masculine, it has been revealed by a local Nebraska newspaper that Tampon Tim lied about being in Tiananmen Square in 1989 during the Chinese Communist crackdown. He wasn't there. He was in Nebraska when that was going on. Here's the photo that proves that lie, another lie, again. Ponder all of this collectively. Lies about rank he achieved in the military, lies about being in combat, lies about being in Tiananmen Square. Why? Because those are the sort of lies that make you appear to be all manly. Just up here, look at me, I'm a war guy. I was in Tiananmen Square. Yeah, he's the prototype male of the feminazi movement. Liberal women love weak men, beta males, because weak men support them in their horrible choices. They're weak because they need the adulation of women to feel loved and popular, only to be eventually undermined. Just check with Emhoff, who reports say he was complicit in the killing of his own child. And what perhaps is most dangerous is that they want to pass on their cultural DNA to the next generation of males, tampons in the bathrooms, because Tim is also sensitive to the needs of psychologically disturbed young boys who think they're girls, likely caused by yet another horrible male in the household of the young boy. For all the bluster of women's rights since the 1960s, it's really always been about churning out men like Walls, weak, sissified betas who need to repeatedly lie and fake their masculinity so women can walk all over them and the Wallses of the world can feel good about it. Somehow it's fitting and altogether appropriate that Walls should be playing second fiddle to Harris. He's had a lifetime of experience doing that, after all. Two different views of the world and men on stage. It's just a few hours away. God love you. I'm Gary Michael Vorse.